This is a test. This station is conducting a test of the emergency broadcast system. This is only a test.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Thunderpud number 2, broadcasting from the Rabbit Hole. I'm proud to present this special presentation of the good news with the Reverend Doctor. I turn it over now to your co-host, Agent C.
Welcome back, everybody. Guys, it's been a busy week. It's been a busy couple of weeks, but especially this week has been extremely active.
Yeah, there was a tragedy just a couple days ago in New Zealand. We'll definitely be getting into some of that today. But this episode is actually sort of a special presentation, as I said originally, because we had not planned on this episode. We kind of went off schedule.
Yes.
A little bit.
Yeah.
Due to the fact that there was a documentary that was just released on HBO a couple weeks ago, and that documentary was Leaving Neverland,
right?
About Michael Jackson and some of the accusations brought forth by two men who have claimed that Michael Jackson did in fact sexually molest them as children. So, Reverend, I know this is a subject that you hold very dear to you. This is something that's very important to talk about. And I know you.
This is the equivalent of the Saved by the Bell episode where Jesse got hooked on caffeine pills.
Yeah,
this is our very special
absolutely.
There it is. Yep. Yes. And I know you reached out. I was like, we need to put something out about this, and so we
well, not to give too many spoilers or anything, but there's an episode that we're building up to doing at some point that's going to be full long one that we're going to really go head first into the topic of Hollywood, sex abuse, pedophilia, so on.
Right.
But when the Leaving Neverland documentary came out, this thing's 4 hours long.
Yes.
Not even including the interview that they show after it.
Right.
And I started looking at it and going, this is really kind of its own topic.
Right. Yeah. This is something we can definitely do as a standalone.
Right.
And I think it's something we should do as a standalone. So, one thing I want to say about this documentary, and you know me, guys, I try to keep it, what's the word I'm looking for? I always try to play devil's advocate. I try to do that. I try to look at it from all different levels and everything. One thing I do want to talk about this documentary before we get too deep into the show is that there was no one from the Michael Jackson family, estate, or anyone associated with Michael Jackson.
No, there wasn't.
That was on this documentary to refute these claims.
The Jackson family, from what I understand, is actually trying to sue HBO over it.
Really?
Because it came... Which tour was it? I believe it was the Dangerous Tour. I want to say back in 92, 93.
93.
That sounds about right.
HBO was given exclusive broadcasting rights to it.
I remember that.
And part of that came with...
no defamation of character.
Yeah, that there was a pretty lengthy stack of papers that the network had to sign because this was right at the time when the first child molestation trial was going on.
Right. Now, and one other thing I want to say about these two gentlemen, and once again, Reverend, you may have to help me with the names. It was Wade Robson.
Robson,
I'm sorry. And the other one, Safechuck was the last name, the first.
James or Jimmy Safechuck.
Jimmy Safechuck. One thing we also do need to put out there for fairness is that both of these men, when they were small or younger children, both said in court, if I'm not mistaken, Reverend, twice that they.
Well, one of them said it twice. One said it once.
That they were not molested.
Right.
They have been on record in court saying that they were not. They were not molested. So that's a couple things that I think we should put out. In the very beginning to say, hey, there was
a disclaimer.
Absolutely, because there was no one on Michael Jackson's behalf to say, hey, no, this is incorrect. This is But with all that being said, it was. Personally, in my opinion, it was a very, very disturbing.
It was pretty damning.
Very much so. Now, Agent C, you did not get a chance to see this documentary.
I didn't. And I think, I'd ask you, if you had seen it, and is there any way I can get a copy from you to see it.
And obviously, I don't promote piracy, so of course I wouldn't do that.
Of course not. And I didn't go out of my way to see it. But I think part of me just wanted to stay away from it.
Right.
Because with these films, as they are, they can be very one-sided.
Oh, and this one was.
Absolutely.
Yes. Yeah.
I know I have a good friend, Billy Mitchell. If you're familiar with him, he's in the arcade.
The King of Kong.
Culture, yeah.
Yep. Right.
There was a documentary that came out probably about a decade ago. It put him in a very bad light. And when I didn't know Billy, he was an asshole. This guy is just a pure asshole.
Right.
In this movie, in this documentary.
But you know the man personally.
Once I met Billy, that changed tremendously.
Do you think there is a difference between documentary and propaganda?
A difference?
Yes.
Or what? I mean, what is the gray dividing line between it?
I definitely think documentaries can become propaganda for sure. And there may even be an argument to be made about this one. Possibly, just saying, to keep it,
Well, because I read some of the Jackson family or the Jackson estate's defense against the documentary, and what they were saying is these were the same type of allegations that this man was subject to during his lifetime.
Right.
And it's very cheap and one-sided because he's not around to defend himself.
Exactly.
Well, that was the whole thing about the defamation of character, because that doesn't hold up because he's dead.
Right.
And for some reason, you can do it while you're deceased or someone's deceased.
After.
Yeah, absolutely. It was strange to me that would happen, but talking about the Jackson estate, with the exclusive rights to the Dangerous tour, and there was another one.
The History Tour, maybe?
History Tour.
It was a history, because I remember that was a big.
As soon as
What was
they,
that, 95, 96?
I think so. Yeah, it sounds about right. Yeah.
as soon as HBO broke their contract, so to say, the Jackson estate actually put up both of those concerts on YouTube for free.
Oh, really?
I
really?
read about that.
Yeah.
Was that kind of a fuck you to HBO?
Absolutely.
Really.
Yeah.
See, I didn't know that. I wasn't aware of that. But yeah, Reverend, going back to what you were saying about documentaries and propaganda, yeah, man. I mean, I think that's absolutely possible. And I think these documentary makers, they already, in my opinion, probably already have their minds made up anyway.
Of course they do.
Sure. Yeah. Why would they even begin the project if they don't?
A common thing that I've heard numerous times when seeing people discuss it was people had sort of resigned to the point of, were there that many people who didn't think Michael Jackson was guilty of these crimes, but they just needed two more people to say it?
Exactly, because we've already had people come out. I mean, 2 decades ago,
Right. Well, this is Dan Reed's second movie dealing with pedophilia.
What was his first one?
Yeah, I'm not familiar.
Let me check. Give me just a second.
Sure.
Take a minute on that. Let's see.
Let's see here. Because like I said, I'm not familiar with the filmmaker anyway.
I'm not either.
I'm not really. Not a fan.
Before this, the Leaving Neverland debuted on HBO. It was actually at the Sundance Film Festival. Month before?
Yeah, and I did hear about that. Correct. So we're going to see what this other. We're looking right now.
The Pedophile Hunters.
I've not heard.
I've not heard of that one either.
Yeah,
that's
it
new
came
to
out
me.
in 2014.
2014. Yeah,
Was
that's
that one
new.
about perverted justice or something?
Pretty much. I think it follows.
And this was a TV movie?
Look at the work
Yeah.
of Stinson Hunter and his gang who pose as underage girls in order to catch pedophiles.
Okay. All right. So, this man obviously has a history, dealing with pedophilia, and it sounds like he's definitely, trying to shed some light on these situations. One thing about Michael Jackson, guys, now, obviously I was in my 20s when all this stuff was going on. You know, man, I was in and out of the house a lot. I didn't watch a lot of television, never watched the news. You know, I had other things going on, like, you know, girls and guitars. You know, that was my biggest thing. But I do remember when this was going on. And I also remember when Michael Jackson was able to come on and defend himself. Let me ask you guys this. I get, or see if you guys have the same opinion as I do of Michael Jackson in general. The man was not normal by any stretch.
No,
I mean,
absolutely not.
I know normal is a relative term, but I'm talking. I believe it's safe to say the man was abnormal.
Jackson is somebody who people are going to look back on in history books a century later, century from now, anyway. And independent of whatever you want to say about his crimes, alleged or real,
Right.
people are going to say that guy lived one of the most interesting lives of anyone in history.
Oh, without a doubt. Without a doubt. You know, you know, guys, I think this is what it boils down to. This is my opinion. Obviously, everything on here is opinion, you know, or from me, you know. I think it really boils down to this question. Was Michael Jackson truly asexual, as a lot of people claimed, or was he a sexual person? I think it really boils down to that, of whether or not these things happened.
There's some really interesting shit about that. Did you catch? There was a testimony by his doctor back, was it 2009 or 2010 when he turned up dead?
I don't remember. Honest to God, I think it was around 2010. I think I'm not sure. Bro.
Okay, well,
I'm
when
not
the courts were getting a statement from his doctor over all the medication he was being prescribed, one of the things that this doctor said was that Jackson was chemically castrated as a child.
I've heard that theory. I actually heard that on the Joe Rogan. Once again, you know, kind of giving some props to the Joe Rogan show here. That was a theory that him and one of his guests were going into. There was a term for it.
Castrato.
Yes, sir. That's it. Yes.
That was the term they would use back in medieval Italy and all over Europe, really, where a child would be castrated to preserve their singing voice.
Yes, so their voice never cracks during puberty and stuff like that.
Gotcha. Okay.
And I think there's actually still one recording of that. Like Rogan was talking about it, and they said it's very haunting. I've never listened to it.
I've heard it.
Have you heard it?
Yeah.
Really? There was something about it that I just wanted to avoid for whatever reason.
It's different.
Yeah, I've heard. Now let me ask you, Reverend, since you've heard that recording.
So that would take out completely. Take out the whole masturbation accusations, because I mean, if you've heard like the allegations from the two from the Leaving Neverland, there was you know, there was Michael would be masturbating and would teach the child how to masturbate,
Right.
And they would do it together, and so that would knock
Well,
that whole
presumably
thing
it would
out.
mean he could still pleasure himself, but as far as sperm production, I guess, yeah.
So you would still be able to get an erection. See, I don't
Well,
know.
and he'd still be able to ejaculate because there's a difference between sperm and semen.
Well, I mean,
Right.
castration. I guess we need to clarify that. Would that mean?
Well, he was chemically
castrated. Okay.
Right.
Okay.
Which just means that the sperm production or testosterone production is basically chemically.
Yeah, there's a couple interesting accounts I'd heard. One of them is that, have you heard that there was an experimental acne medication back in the 70s?
That sounds familiar. That's ringing a bell.
Okay, well, from what I understand, it never made it to the market or to shelves, and it was only available to people who could afford it, basically child stars.
Right.
And, you know, one of the things about acne is that chemically it comes about during the onset of puberty.
Sure.
And what this medication essentially did was it blocked the onset of puberty as a side effect.
Okay.
And there's a lot of people who seem to think that Jackson had been given this shit.
Okay. I mean, I guess my question to that would be like, well, who are some of these other people? You know,
that I can't say.
Right. Because I would not hold it. You know, I would not put it past the Jackson family. Well, who was the father? Was it Joe? Joe Jackson. Apparently, this man was a straight up piece of shit, according to pretty much everyone. You know.
Yeah, that sounds pretty safe.
Yeah, and it would not surprise me at all if this man wouldn't have given his child. And that's one thing, guys, that I want to talk about Michael Jackson, because I was one of those people who did not want to believe these allegations back in the 90s.
Mm-hmm.
I still don't. I was a fan of his music, you know, and I think we have to kind of separate the fandom from, you know, having a reasonable mindset about it as well. But one thing, man, the Jackson 5 were so popular. It's so huge. I don't know if people really realize how big the Jackson 5 was. Yeah. And to see a man, whose livelihood, who has got a hell of a livelihood, I'm speaking of the father, who's also the manager, and given the abusive nature or history this man has had, and everybody's come out saying that he was very abusive, I could absolutely see him feeding his child the star.
Well, we throw around a lot of phrases like the cult of celebrity in America.
Yes.
It doesn't get higher than Jackson back in the day.
Yeah. No. In fact, me and a guy at work were talking, and I can't think of anybody other than maybe Elvis who was as big. And even then, there's an argument to be made. I mean, because Jackson came up during the 80s, which was hyper everything. I mean, everything was hyperized.
Well, I was having a conversation with a friend just yesterday about this, how one of the things that struck me as so odd about the documentary was learning that from 2005 to 2007, there were still Make-A-Wish kids wanting to meet Jackson.
Yeah.
Because these weren't kids who remember Thriller.
No.
They don't remember Beat It, Billie Jean, any of that stuff. All they've ever known is the weird, white guy who married Lisa Marie Presley.
Right. And with these allegations.
Yeah.
I mean, that was really his legacy at that, for that point when these kids
he was the guy who moonwalked on top of a car outside of the child molestation trial.
Seriously, though, that was his legacy at this particular time in history, man. And like I said, it really hurt me. Not hurt me. Hurt that I'm being over dramatic. It concerned me back in the day that this would even be going on, because I was really a fan, and I knew that the man was not normal in any sense of the word due to his history. I mean, man, how can you be the biggest star in the world at 7 years old and come up normally in any way?
Right.
I remember in his interview that he had after all these allegations first happened, and he came out to defend himself. The only thing that really stuck to me was how he was talking about full-grown women would make sexual advances on him at like 7 years old. Try to grab him. I mean, how does that not?
I mean, you heard the same thing with Von Erichs in wrestling.
In professional wrestling, same thing, man.
It would happen. It would happen for real.
Yeah.
To Chris Von Erich.
Yeah.
And he was what? 11, 12?
Yeah, a kid.
Yeah.
So I know you said that you didn't want to believe it, but did you think there was any credibility the first go round?
Absolutely, and I still do.
Yeah.
Credibility as far as
the allegations.
Allegations? Yeah. No, me personally, I don't.
You don't think?
I don't. You look at that case with Chandler, and they did a settlement of what, $12 million?
Yeah.
Somewhere between 10 and 20. I don't think the actual number's ever been disclosed.
Would you settle?
So Mike, let me ask.
Would you settle
for $12 million, brother? I'm gonna be honest with you. I don't have children. Let me say that first and foremost.
Yeah.
So it's hard for me to say for sure because I don't have a child.
That's
in
like
my
punching
life.
your best friend in the mouth for $12 million. Absolutely.
Oh, well, fuck yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, man. I mean,
All right.
Yeah.
But if you had that child,
it's different.
hey,
But $12 million.
Yeah.
If someone, whoever did this,
right,
whether it be Joe down the street,
right,
or Michael on top of the hill,
but
I am not letting it go. Not that easy. Not $12 million. Not anything.
There's that bond amount.
No, there's that bond. There's that bond. If you actually care for that child, that bond. There is nothing that there's no amount, no monetary, there's nothing.
There's no price.
There's no price. There's no compensation for that.
But one thing I'm gonna say, Agent C, though, but you are a good, decent human being.
Right.
Some of these parents
are
maybe not. Or and you also have to wonder, because that's one thing that I was picking up, Reverend, was how these parents seem to also be manipulated, or at least that was what it appeared to be on this documentary.
Yeah.
Well, what do you call? I guess what my point to kind of counterpoint what Agent C is saying is, if these parents are so into this lifestyle, to where they have the money, they have, they maybe don't have the fame per se, but they're definitely in that circle. What the fame is there, in other words, they have an insight to Michael Jackson's personal life.
Well, there's definitely a pattern that you saw with a lot of these, that in that many of these were stage kids, who may have come from single mothers,
Sure.
And there was a grooming process that, by all accounts, started before they ever even met Jackson, just
Right.
because of how big of a figure he was
Right.
in pop culture. And how would you say it? The way he would groom the kids wasn't just limited to them. It seemed like it was also their mothers as well.
Yeah, because, and correct me if I'm wrong, Reverend, but didn't both fathers of the children or the men in this documentary, didn't both of them ended up committing suicide?
I think so.
I think both of
I
the
know
fathers.
one of them did.
Yeah, at least one. I think it was Wade
Robson.
Robson's. I think, and I think the Shoe Chuck, is that the right name of mine?
Safe
Save,
Chuck.
I'm sorry,
Yeah.
Save Chuck.
It's so Chuck.
I think Save Chuck's may have as well. Once again, I'm not sure about that, but it seems like both fathers committed suicide. One thing that really kind of stuck out to me, Reverend, is when the mother of Wade was talking about how and I may be, once again, brother, I may be getting my wires crossed, but they were talking about being accepted into a talent agency. And they were like, yeah, we want them, get them down here. It almost sounded to me like she sold her kid.
Well, that's exactly what happens.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what child stardom is.
Yeah, it's like you're selling your kid to this talent agency. And, I mean, that's the way it came across to me. And I'm like, who would do that? You know what I'm saying? I mean, it's so far out of my wellhouse, I can't even wrap my head around it. But I think me and you, Rev, were talking through the week about how even the manipulation of the parents was a factor in this.
Yeah, that was a really odd facet of it. The way that the parents, when you would listen to the mothers talk, your reaction at first was kind of one of confusion, where you're like, okay, was there some kind of some kind of a Billie Jean like romantic interest between? But no, that wasn't it at all. It was that the mothers saw Jackson as so asexual, they saw him as one of their children.
They're kids. Yeah, like that one mother was even like, well, he would come and get on the floor and play with my child like he was one of my sons. And, I think it once again kind of turns back to the fact is if the man was asexual and didn't have any sexual interest, it's still, to me, guys, it's still unacceptable to be sleeping in a bed with,
Oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, and there was even one part in that documentary where one of the parents, I think it was Save Chuck's mom, she was like, well, we never really got anything out of it. Well, he did buy our house. Do you remember that, Reverend? She said something, I'm paraphrasing the man, obviously, but she did make an allusion or alluded to the fact that there wasn't a lot of monetary gain, but then in the same sense, like, oh, well, I guess he did buy our house. Or something to that extent.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, and I was like, well, damn, man, I mean... But, Mike, kind of going back to what you were saying about the $12 million, and you're like, there's no amount of money.
Right.
Let me devil.
Well, I can agree with that too. Yeah. I mean, I'm a parent myself,
sure.
And if something like that came about and it was legit, there's no
dollar amount.
I mean, I think any parent who's worth a damn is going to say the same thing.
I agree, but I want to devil advocate it and be like, what if you're the accused? Because if I was the accused, let's say somebody said that I did that, there's no way I'm settling. I'm taking it to court. I'm keeping my innocence. You know what I'm saying? I'm going to maintain my innocence.
I thought about this as well, with Michael. And Michael does not defend himself. He has a group of people that defends him.
Oh, yeah.
And they're going to definitely say, hey, let's settle out. This is looking bad. Let's get this.
But are you not going to put your child above yourself? That here's what I mean by that.
Yeah,
if something, if I was a child who Michael Jackson molested and they said, his estate comes to court and says for $15 million, will you basically shut the fuck up and go away?
Right.
I mean... Hell, I mean, I could entertain that, but if it's my child, nah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And
unless it's a cash grab.
And once again, though, guys, I kind of look at the parents themselves, because even to have the ability to have your child in Michael Jackson's life tells you that you have done something to get there. I
was thinking you were about to say that you've done something wrong.
Well, I mean, I don't want to say right or wrong, but
it's like the Chris Rock joke about all you got to do as a parent is make sure your daughter doesn't end up on the pole.
Yeah, pretty much, man. Pretty much.
Yeah.
But it seems to me to even get in that circle to where Michael Jackson has access to your child, you had to come up a ladder some way, somehow. You had to do either like through the talent agency, or the contest like these parents did, because I know at least Wade was through a dance competition. and you know,
Right,
And he met him backstage, and then the other one, Safe Chuck, he actually got to. He first appeared in the Pepsi commercial.
That's right.
And
Yeah,
then
that's right.
He and Jackson hit it off so well that he took him on tour for Bad.
That's right. The one.
Well, let's look at the other ones. I mean, you got
Macaulay Culkin.
Culkin, Alfonso Roberto.
Oh, really? I didn't know he was into that or in that
Yeah,
scene or.
believe so.
Okay,
Oh, yeah,
okay,
absolutely.
okay. Well, I
mean,
wasn't
have
familiar.
you ever watched his old stuff? You know, that was he was like a little Michael Jackson.
There was another.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah,
There was
that's
another
right, yeah.
Australian, Brett Barnes, at the same time.
Right.
And then Jordan Chandler. They were all at the same era.
Yeah.
Right. Now, let me ask you guys: how many back in the '90s, Reverend? How many children or parents of the children came out? Was it two? Was it only two people that came out? I mean, I'm not saying only as you know. I mean, I'm not trying to downplay it, but
Well, there were two trials. There
Okay.
was 1993 and 2004.
okay.
And the 2004 one was a boy named Gavin Arzavu, however you say it.
Right.
But he was a Make-A-Wish kid
Okay.
who alleged that it had happened during a stay at Neverland, sort of like the first one.
And I know both Macaulay Culkin and also Corey Feldman have both come out and said that Michael Jackson never touched them, never molested them. But
I'm almost inclined to believe him.
yeah, I do. From what I've heard, especially Macaulay, because I saw him on the Rogan Show one day once again, and I think.
At one time, Macaulay Culkin was in a bad place.
Oh yeah, dude, he was damaged like a
And-
lot of child actors are.
Right,
you know.
right. And it would have been really easy for him to say, yes, this happened,
Yeah.
to boost him up.
Oh yeah. Or
Well,
he
not
could-
only that, but with Corey Feldman, the thing I thought about was he and Jackson really didn't start hanging out until Feldman was 15, 16 years old.
Right.
And which, by all appearances on the surface, seems to be way past the point of age that Jackson was interested in.
Right.
So when Feldman says he wasn't sexually abused, I believe him.
I do too.
Because I think it's totally feasible. Two things really. The first one being that I think it's totally feasible that Jackson's relationship with Feldman was more like being friends.
A buddy.
That they may have just
Yeah.
been close friends who bonded over having a shitty childhood.
Right. Exactly.
And the other being, there needs to be a discussion point interjected in this whole broad topic about Jackson, period, that his relationship with other child stars like Feldman and Macaulay Culkin may have been totally different from the relationship he had with families he groomed.
Exactly, because I think what you just said is paramount about grooming the family. Because in that documentary, if it is legit, if what these people are saying are true, then that was as biggest part of Michael Jackson's manipulation than as with the kids was with the family. Because they, like we were saying earlier, they were literally would say that he was part of the family. He was like another child to them, a man in his 30s.
Well, he didn't only groom the children and their families, he groomed all of us.
Yes, exactly.
All of us.
Yes, because of who he was and his status. Absolutely. Once again, like I said earlier, I didn't want to believe.
And I'm not even talking about just grooming in the sense of thinking he was innocent, because lots of people didn't think he was innocent.
Sure.
But a lot of people were permissive about turning an eye to it.
Yes, and I think a lot of it too is people felt sorry for him.
Yeah.
I did when I first started reading, or I shouldn't say read, but you started hearing about this stuff back in the day, especially with that interview. I go back to the interview he gave on. Do you remember that,
Oh,
guys?
yeah,
Do you,
for sure.
y'all remember
Oh, for
that?
sure.
I mean, by the time that thing was over, he had me feeling so bad for him.
Are you talking about the 2020 interview?
Yes.
Or
yes.
Barbara Walters? I don't remember who it
Yes,
was.
yeah, it was back in right after the first trial
Okay.
was thrown out. He came out to kind of give his side of everything, and I mean, when it was all said and done, I remember thinking, it's like, oh, there's no way he did this. But guys, I go back to my gut feeling, which it's just not appropriate to have children in your bed. And even if you're asexual, even if you had this abnormal upbringing, someone should have pulled him to the side and be like, you cannot do this.
The thing I found really interesting in this, one of them, is that even as these two boys grew into men, got older, that there was still a disconnect going on where they didn't believe what happened was abuse. That because of how asexual Jackson's nature was, they almost you got the gist that they viewed it like it was two kids experimenting or something when they were young.
It sounded to me like a full-blown manipulative relationship.
Yeah.
Is what it sounded like, because those men would tell you that they were in love, romantically in love with Michael Jackson, because with the jealousy when Michael Jackson would drop one and start,
Right.
for lack of a better term, start seeing another child, like when he told, I think it was Wade, that he couldn't go on tour because there were no more kids allowed, but then he took a kid with him.
And I sort of developed a different opinion about the reasons psychologically behind both of them, because that's just how I watch things like this. I end up analyzing them all psychologically, I guess.
Right.
And I almost hate to go too far and say things that may or may not be true, but go ahead with your point you were about to say.
Well, and I just want to go
bring this up. There was a trial not too long ago here in town where a guy had been accused of sexually abusing a young girl.
Okay. Come
to find out, the little girl had made it all up because she was mad.
Mm-hmm. Right.
He would not let her use the PS4.
So she comes up with this story. And that happens. Guys, I mean, it does. I think in today's culture, especially with the Me Too movement that we just saw, it's hard to navigate because, and I know we're not here to talk about the Me Too movement, but just the way I look at it, the one thing that I heard, and I forget who it was somebody who was,
right,
on the more left side of politics. And somebody said everybody has the right to be believed.
Yeah,
I disagree,
absolutely.
but I disagree with that. Mm-hmm. I don't think everybody has the right to be believed, because then what keeps you from lying?
I think everybody has the right to have their allegations heard.
That's what I was going to say. I think everybody has the right to be heard, and I think everybody has the right to take it to trial, and I think everybody has the right to a free trial, or to a fair trial is what I'm trying to say. So it's hard, man, because it's like you want to believe these men that they had this happen to them, but you have to, you also have to keep in mind that it could be it could be bullshit.
Right.
Personally, I don't think it is.
I
do want to say that.
I mean, a point that you talked about earlier, to sort of cut in, the way you talked about how there were a couple points during the documentary that you had to stop it.
Yeah, because I had to stop it.
I guess the part that I remember thinking that was when they were giving the testimonies about their abuse, and it just drolled on
that's when I had to stop it. Yeah,
I started getting flashbacks of JonBenet Ramsey.
Yeah,
and how would you say there was? It was almost like, do you remember back in the 90s? There was this climate of a unique obsession with being hyper protective of children.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
And we have three real taboos in our culture, three big ones: Nazism, terrorism, and child sex abuse.
Absolutely.
Those are the three big ones.
Sure.
Now, those are the three things that can bury someone's life.
Oh, yeah.
In the court of public opinion.
Sure.
But we sensationalize the fuck out of those.
Oh, yeah, brother. Oh, man, we sensationalize every fucking thing, especially that, yeah.
I mean, for a side example, there's no easier way for somebody to have their credibility completely destroyed than by saying this person's a Nazi.
Oh, you're done.
In 2019.
You're done.
We have multiple channels that are 24-hour Hitler binges.
Yes, absolutely.
I mean, this is shit we sensationalize the hell out of. And what I meant by that was when I say, I remember during the 90s, the JonBenet Ramsey climate, how it seemed like for 2-3 years after that, every supermarket tabloid was her on the cover.
Oh, God, man.
Giving testimony.
Yes.
Every, you could turn on during midday, any day of the week,
her
all
picture.
the talk shows.
Yes.
And whether it was Geraldo, Jenny Jones, Donahue, who the fuck ever.
All of them, yeah.
It was not just about her and that trial. It was other kids coming on, and they were saying, stay tuned after the commercial break. Little Megan or little Melissa, whoever's going to tell what happened to him.
To her, right.
And there's a really exploitative, sensationalized air of it.
Absolutely, man. I mean, it's very exploitative. I mean, you're basically profiting off of these kids' stories.
Right.
Yeah, sure. It's ratings. Ratings.
Going back to that, the tabloids and exploiting, Michael Jackson
All over the
saw that way before any of these accusations. I mean, everything from, Bubbles.
Yeah, you got to talk about Bubbles.
To the Elephant Man bones.
Yeah.
To the
Hell,
sarcophagus.
the Beatles.
To everything.
Buying the Beatles.
To everything.
Right.
And he's doing
I
all
totally
this stuff.
forgot about him having John Merrick's
He sure did.
skeleton.
Yeah.
So they're basically setting him up. Every week there's something different. Some of it true, some of it not true.
Well, even going into his surgeries, to reconstruct his face, his skin bleaching, even that's a conspiracy theory. I mean, people say that he has the disease. I forget the name of the disease, but there's people that are like, no, he doesn't bleach his skin. I'm like, absolutely, he does.
So are we to think, knowing this and this being put in our face every week, are we to think, okay, this is possible. The guy's weird. Why not?
Yeah.
Why not?
Sure.
Wouldn't a parent or a family attach onto that and say, oh, look, this guy's doing all this other stuff. Why not this?
Sure, man. And I also think that it's very possible that families would lie to get the money. I mean, of course, absolutely.
Do you think that's part of the bigger cultural disconnect that we talked about before with regards to pedophilia? How, during the 80s and 90s, all the, not propaganda, but all the shit put out about it was, in this context of stranger danger.
Oh, yeah.
This guy
Yeah,
with
yeah.
a Camaro circling a playground and all that.
Yeah.
But that's less than,
Or the van. Yeah.
But when in reality, that stuff's less than 0.1% of all of it. That, 99% of all child abuse is from a trusted family friend.
Yeah.
Right.
Or family.
Or relative.
Family.
Yeah.
Do you think that this is something, like I said, part of our bigger disconnect about how we have to create like an eccentric figure to throw it all on?
Almost like the quote-unquote man.
Yeah,
The
that
blame.
makes it easier to believe.
Yeah.
The more eccentric
sure.
a person is, the more
Right.
willing we are to believe that they're, a sex pervert.
And capable of doing these things, and absolutely, and just to add to that point, when you are Michael Jackson, who does surround himself with children, whether or not that's because he feels like he's a child and he wants to be around
Willy
children.
Wonka.
Absolutely, that's a great example. Or is he legitimately a pedophile?
Right.
And these are his I kind of hate to say it, but his lovers, man. I even hate to say that word. I mean, I do.
But there again, you would see droves of people coming and saying, hey, this is not just to this decade, then 20
I see
years
what you're
down the
saying.
road to this. What happens? I don't understand. That's the part I don't understand about this whole thing. And looking at,
I see your point, man. In other words, when more people come out.
exactly. I mean, you look at like the first 90s trial.
Right.
Everybody was pretty much behind Michael at that point.
Public
2000
opinion.
trial, everybody turned
I
their
remember
back.
being somewhat split.
Somewhat
It was.
Somewhat
It really
split.
was, yeah.
But now by the
2000
time the second one came around, it was very different.
Yeah.
One-sided at that point,
Yeah.
that he did.
Everybody
Did he
turned
say.
OJ
on
is a
Michael.
similar.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a
Yeah.
good analogy. Yes, it is.
Everybody turned real
Yeah.
quick. Michael dies 6 years later.
No, it's like he
and
never
you
did
could,
anything.
He never. Man
Almost
could have
sainted.
never done wrong.
Yeah, almost saying
Could have never done wrong.
Right.
8 years later, 9 years later,
Then you have
same thing.
There was a lot of star repair shit that was done after the first trial. Like the marriage with Lisa Marie Presley was the big one.
Yes.
That, from what I understand, was put together by Scientology.
Really.
Yeah, because, they've always been sort of in the star repair business of
yeah.
taking
Oh,
people
yeah.
when they're at some kind of a low point, like whether it's drugs, whether it's some kind of allegations of wrongdoing that's put them really low in the court of public opinion.
Right.
And doing something to normalize them, I guess, or make them look good.
Right.
And with it happened to, I guess, at that point in time, be a marriage of mutual convenience.
Right,
Where
right.
Lisa Marie Presley, being Elvis and Priscilla's daughter, had a long history of drug
abuse.
Drug abuse.
Yeah.
And with Jackson just coming out of that, it was a way to make them both look normal.
Right.
Do you guys want to know the first place I heard about those two getting married? Swear to God, was the Weekly World News.
Yeah.
Swear to
Yeah.
God. Because I used to work at a little gas station, me and my brother worked, and we loved the Weekly World News. I mean, we look forward to it every week. And I'll never forget, like, hey, Brian, you know, that's my brother's name. I'm like, hey, Brian, looks like Lisa Marie Presley and Michael Jackson got married. And it was on the cover. We're just laughing. It's like, yeah, that's a good one. 2 weeks later, it was national news. I was like, holy shit. I was
Yeah.
like, yeah, man. I mean, it's just kind of mind-blowing to me that a comedic satire paper like the Weekly World News, you know, the creator of Bat Boy
Right.
actually reported on that first. But, you know, going back to what you were saying, Reverend, I think that's what I thought when I first heard it on a legitimate source. I was like, oh, this is bullshit. This is a straight-up cover. This is damage control. I mean, look, and it goes against the original defense that Michael Jackson was asexual. That was the first time I ever heard that term.
Yeah.
Plus, she looks so much like Elvis. It's like, man, come on.
I thought Priscilla's kind of hot, dude. I'm not
Really?
gonna lie. Yeah,
She
man,
was
yeah,
all right.
She was all right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She looked too much like her dad, man. It was like, I don't know.
You want to give her the Jailhouse Rock, brother?
That'd
She
be
was
tough.
hot in a-
It'd
in a
be tough.
really
I like
hot mom type way.
There-
Like
there you
almost,
go.
See, the way I envision Priscilla though is from The Naked Gun.
Yeah.
No,
yeah,
no,
yeah, yeah.
no. Oh,
No, that was the
Kind
mom.
of in the same way
that
as
was the
Kathleen
mother.
No,
Turner,
yeah,
I guess.
Priscilla Presley
Just
was
that
the mom.
Priscilla-
Priscilla was the mom. Lisa Marie was
Lisa
the daughter.
Marie.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
she looked too much like her dad.
Yeah, okay, we were getting-
But yeah,
yeah,
Priscilla. Oh,
Priscilla was
incredible.
Hot as hell.
Yeah. Oh,
But
absolutely.
see, I thought Lisa Marie was all right.
No, I think she looked like her dad. Exactly like her dad. It was tough. That's tough.
Yeah, I get
You
the
couldn't
two of
do
them
that.
confused. Well, I get
Yeah.
Priscilla
Yeah.
Presley and Kathleen Turner confused with each other because they both kind of occupy that MILF
Yeah,
territory.
yeah, exactly,
Let
man.
me tell you,
Soccer mom
that-
type.
Yeah.
This is a whole
yeah.
different conversation because I absolutely love Kathleen Turner.
Yeah, yeah.
Even now, still today.
I was still hot as hell.
Yeah,
we'll
those
get
are
into all
probably
that.
those are
later.
probably wrong levels there, but yeah.
Yeah, we'll have to get into all that in another show. But,
Serial mom.
Yes.
Holy.
yeah,
Wow. All right.
but
Off track.
yeah, off track. But you know, it does go against the defense of being asexual, though. I mean, if the man got married, then that tells me right there that he does have a libido. That means he can get an erection. He can have an orgasm.
Really?
Well, I mean,
But
if,
see, a
if-
lot
if
of
we're
that
to
shit
take
was
it-
so obviously star repair, though, because not only that, which I don't think anybody really viewed their marriage as legit.
No one I've ever talked to.
And
no.
then when, I guess it was 97, when he began having children,
right.
there was three. There was Prince Michael, there was Paris,
Paris,
the girl,
Blanket,
and Blanket as the youngest
yeah,
one.
yeah.
None of those kids look like him.
None. I mean, man, they're white.
Yes, and people
I mean, they're
forget that
white.
Michael Jackson is not white.
He's black. Yes, man, and these kids are as white as us in this room, man.
Yeah.
I don't see it. I mean,
Yeah.
I just always assumed they were adopted or something. You know?
I'll put it like this: if you got injections to make your skin black,
Right.
and then you had a child with a white woman, your kid's not going to be half black.
no,
Right,
no, it's going. Yeah, the kids. gonna
Unless
be
you
white.
have a surrogate
exactly,
donor.
exactly, which is where once again
There's always been rumors it was Macaulay Culkin.
really,
Yeah,
really. I'm not.
Or
I'm
that at the very least, Blanket is Macaulay Culkin's
Oh,
child.
shit, I've
Yeah.
never heard that. I could see it though. I mean, but once again, it just adds to that confusion. I mean, was if these are not his biological children, then does that mean he cannot have children? Which goes back to, is he castrated?
It just
Basic-
seemed like they
you
were all
know?
such sham. They were not sham. They were such transparent attempts to make him seem normal.
Normal, and that's even around the time when he hung his baby blanket. I believe it was blanket,
Yeah.
and he hung over the railing, and everybody's like, "Dude, what the fuck is wrong with Michael Jackson?" Which now they're saying, "What the fuck's wrong with Michael Jackson?"
Right.
You know, people should have been saying that for a little.
Oh,
bit
they
earlier,
did
you
for
know.
sure. I remember that whole thing. It's like, oh my god, this man's of his mind.
Yeah, and you know, guys, going back to the documentary, and like I said, AJ, I know you didn't get to see it, but when they were showing some of the footage of him just with kids just walking around Neverland, or they were always holding hands, which, you know, you could say no big deal, but once again, to me, it looked like, hey, they look like they're in a relationship.
It was
That's
totally
how,
inappropriate.
yeah, and it just felt, and like I said, to hear these men talk, once again, I'll go back to, I believe it was Wade who was talking about it. He was like, yeah, I wanted to go on tour. I wanted to be with him. It sounded just like a woman to be talking about a man, or vice versa. I'm just talking about two adults in a relationship. It sounded like that to me.
Yeah.
And then when he took another child on the road with him instead, he said he got extremely jealous. like you would if you were dumped for someone else. I mean,
Yeah.
that's how it sounded to me, man.
I just
See,
to me that sounds like a kid. That sounds like a kid that,
Well,
you know,
now,
especially being from like a split family.
I
You know,
got that.
you can get mad at one parent and the other. Hey,
the
you
point-
took my
the point
sister
you made
here.
about them being lovers
Yeah.
in the child's head. Like, I got that just from one of them.
right.
The other, so that was part of what I was going back to when I took a pause, when I said I got a very different opinion about each of these two
And I saw that on your Facebook page. Yeah, I want to talk about that.
from analyzing them.
Yeah.
See, with Wade, the opinion I sort of formulated of him was that, and see, that was another big part of this, was for two, I can't call them boys, but two men who had such a high and protective opinion of Jackson, they seemed on the surface to be somewhat well adjusted.
Yeah, they did.
They were both, they appeared to be both heterosexual,
Yeah. Both
married,
married. Yeah.
have children.
Yeah.
And-
Careers, they both seem to be working, and not needing the money per se.
Right. And see, with Wade, I got the opinion that he had built his entire life around the fact that he was mentored by Jackson.
Yeah, because this man is a choreographer. Like he even did Britney Spears torso.
NSYNC.
And that trashing him,
yes.
that trashing him wouldn't only be tearing down his own identity, it would be,
Tarnish the legacy, maybe.
that's not exactly what I was going for. But what was your opinion of him? All in all, see, I sort of got, I guess that he had built his entire, not just self-image, but his projected image to everyone else
Right.
around Jackson. That's, I guess, what I was going for.
Yeah.
Almost like it was the cornerstone of his existence.
His entire
Yeah.
identity.
Yeah.
It was based around Michael
Right.
Jackson taking him in and mentoring him, and like I
That
said,
if he threw that away, he'd be throwing away 90% of himself.
I can totally see that. Now, to me, obviously, I'm not educated in psychology or not very well read in this stuff.
That's what I'm here for.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, sir. But to me, both these guys, I swear, man, they seem sincere. They did seem legit. Yeah, I mean, but could they be lying? Absolutely, they could be. But now, I know, Reverend, you said that you felt, was it Wade that you said you felt was pretty sincere across the board? The other guy,
Well,
maybe?
I think, I'll put it like this. I think they were both sincere, but with Jimmy, James, I got the take that there was a bit of embellishment going on.
I see, kind of selling it a little hard. Yeah.
And that's what I mean by there was two totally different opinions I got from. With Wade, I got the opinion that he was just damaged all to shit mentally from it. And because, that goes back to what he was talking about, that for years he sort of viewed it the same way as two, children experimenting with each other. Or, playing doctor or something.
Exactly. Right. Show me mine, I'll show you yours type.
There became a big disconnect when he had children. It started having nightmares about, was it his son or his daughter?
I believe it was a son.
Okay.
I believe.
When he began having nightmares of his newborn son being molested by Jackson and having to confront the idea that, wait a second, this was a 35-year-old man.
Right. And I think that's something that we do need to talk about, is he came out after children. To kind of go back to your original point, Agency, about having kids and how it does change your outlook. It seems to me that when he had his son, he was like, oh, shit, that could happen to him. And then that could have brought it out. Once again, guys, to me, it's just so strange to have a 35-year-old man having a 7-8-year-old child in the bed. I cannot see it. I mean, and unless you are the parent, I can't get around it, man. And the way he manipulated the parents too, it was slow and methodical. The way it came to me, it was like it was incremental. Well, maybe he can just stay at the house, but y'all can stay in the same room. Well, now you can't. Now he wants to come in my room, but you can be right beside us.
Yeah.
Now you're on another floor, and hell, it seems like they even got moved into a different place at one point. Like the parents were in like a different building or
a whole different hotel.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, man.
How do you? I mean, it's just for me. How do you let that happen?
Well, I go back to, we're not talking about an average, regular guy here. We're talking about Michael Jackson.
We're not even talking about average families.
No,
that's what I'm
totally
saying.
Real here.
It's like how do you as a parent, how do you allow that?
And that's been the biggest thing that people have talked to me, that I've talked to some friends at work and stuff like that. It always goes back to that question: how can the parents do it? And I'm like, well, they were manipulated, just like the kids were. I mean, at least according to the parents,
right.
At least according to, or the mothers, I should say, the mothers in this documentary. I was even feeling bad for that one. I can't remember which was which. One of them I felt legitimately bad for. The one who had her colored hair, I believe it was Wade's mother.
I think so.
Yeah. The other one, I didn't really have a lot of sympathy for her. For some reason, it just didn't sound sincere to me.
Well, the opinion I got of James or Jimmy, like I was talking about, was that there was a little bit of embellishment and manipulation going on, I think. And when I took a pause earlier in the show and said I don't want to dive into anything that may or may not be true or make too many allegations, one of the things you learn from studying psychology, or child psychology especially, is that children can have wildly different reactions to pedophilia or child abuse. But a lot of times you see a Stockholm syndrome type thing come about, and this largely tends to be true with children who may not have hit puberty yet, but they maybe are oriented towards being homosexual.
Okay, right.
Say you have a boy who's oriented that way, but is essentially asexual
right.
And before he hits puberty, he gets abused. There's a Stockholm syndrome type thing that happens where it's sort of like they come to fetishize the event in a way, which is really not even the best way of saying it, but they internalize it as thinking like that it was a loving experience.
Right.
And that these tend to be people who will defend their abuser all the way to the grave.
Correct.
Basically. But that was why it sort of threw me off a bit, because how I said both of these, that's a reaction. The way that these two men thought of Jackson in adulthood was somewhat consistent with that.
Right.
But that was what threw me off, was that they were both apparently straight.
Right.
And, have children. But that's kind of what I also meant by I had a different opinion of them.
Right.
That with James, I kind of got a little bit of a, closet vibe, or somebody who was still coming to grips with his sexuality. Maybe.
Right.
But with Wade, I got a totally different one. I just got that because he was a choreographer and like his entire identity was built around Jackson.
Right.
That maybe that was his reason for it, but with James, I definitely got that vibe with him.
It was maybe a little over embellished, like I say, overselling, as you say in pro wrestling.
But that is a general rule they say with child psychology as far as the reactions to child abuse. Boys who are molested by men, there's a totally different response a lot of times between ones who end up heterosexual versus homosexual. A lot of times, if the boy's heterosexual, they look back on their abuse with rage.
Right, exactly.
Almost. But with boys who are oriented towards being homosexual, I guess there's a real disconnect. In other words, they're more apt to that type of Stockholm syndrome I was talking about.
And let me ask you, Reverend, isn't that kind of, not to get into a different subject or a different person here, but isn't that kind of what happened with Milo? Wasn't that his kind of thing when he came out and said that when he was younger he had a homosexual experience? Milo, what's his last name, man?
Yiannopoulos.
Yes. A very for anybody that's out there listening who doesn't know this man, is very, very conservative. Got in a lot of trouble when he came out saying that when he had a homosexual experience, I think he was underage.
Like 11 or 12
Yeah,
or
I was going to say it's around 11 or 12, maybe 13 at the absolute
and
latest.
it was with a grown man, might have even been a priest.
Yes, and actually spoke like positively about this experience.
Yeah,
he got in all kinds of trouble.
Yeah, you got the impression that he had, like I'd said, even though it's not the best word to use because it's not the most accurate, but he had fetishized the event.
Yeah.
And that he had thought of it like it was love,
Right.
And that's an internal, in psychology, that's an internal mechanism that the brain can develop to trauma to keep from cracking.
Exactly. So
You know,
defense.
Patty Hearst is a good example.
Right.
But in general, people can't. Do you know much about Stockholm syndrome in general?
Not really. I mean, other than I know you grow to have a bond, like with your, like if it's a kidnapping case or something like that, you kind of bond and even feel secure.
It's almost formulaic. You can see it with not only cults and kidnapping victims, but also with POWs even.
Oh, really?
But
Okay. All right.
in general, the brain has self-defense mechanisms to keep from cracking.
Right.
That it's really resilient when you come to understand it.
Right.
That say you have somebody who's abducted or whatever. Well, they can be subjected to intense trauma for long periods of time, whether it's physical, sexual, or some combo of all of them.
Right.
And then say, after all that, the captor says, "Hey, here's some food," or
Oh, yeah,
"Okay,
yeah.
I won't beat you this time."
Right.
The brain processes that as showing love.
Love.
or
Right.
sympathy.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And one thing I want to touch on too, just to kind of go with your point, Reverend, what you were saying about don't want to say anything that's not true or not factual. Guys, we're just talking. We're not here to claim that we know all this stuff to be true. This is opinions.
Yes.
Obviously we have facts in there as well, obviously, but for the most part, especially with me, it's just opinions. So it's like I think we said it on other shows. You can take what we say and use that as a guide to find your own research or to do your own research.
Use that as your launch
Right.
pad.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But no one here is claiming that Michael Jackson did molest these men. Nobody's really here saying that he didn't. I mean, to be completely honest, I think we maybe have a difference of opinion. I think Agent C, you may have a different opinion than
Right.
I do. You
Yeah.
know, and that's just what we're here to do. We're here
Exactly.
to discuss it. But guys, I tell you all what, we're about an hour in, so I was going to say this might be a good time to take a break. So let's hear it. Let's have a word from our sponsors,
Absolutely.
and we'll be right back.
Right.
What's up, Puds? This is Jason from the Pudcast with Jason and Mike, and I'm here to invite you to check out the premier video game store in the greater Charlotte area. GameSwap, located at 112 Northeast Court Square in beautiful downtown Lincoln in the great state of North Carolina. Whether you're looking to buy, sell, or trade classic consoles and games like Nintendo, Atari, and Sega, or modern systems like Xbox One and PS4, GameSwap has you covered. And GameSwap is much more than just a video game store. T-shirts, comics, records, toys, collectibles, and much, much more are all here. And don't forget to like them on Facebook. And hey, while you're at it, check out the podcast with Jason and Mike with a brand new episode dropping every Sunday. You can find us on Facebook, YouTube, iTunes, Spotify, Google Play, and podcast.com. Music provided by Silence is My Canvas.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're back, and I'm proud to present the second hour of our special presentation on Leaving Neverland. Agent C, brother, what do you think so far?
Really, it's a lot of the same thing that for decades. And we were talking earlier, just off the recording, that it's just there is so deep and it's gone on for so long that it is hard to distinguish fact from
Are you sort of talking about how we'd gone in last time about the satanic panic
right
type thing?
Yeah.
Because I kind of was going to go there.
Yes,
too.
Yeah.
How a point that we had sort of got to last time is, there's never been a time, if we're being honest, when pedophilia didn't exist.
Sure, absolutely, man.
It's always something that's been around, but
Sure.
the thing that was unique about the 80s and 90s, specifically the satanic panic and the ritual abuse scandals and all that we had talked about on the previous show, is that from what I can tell, pedophilia, you have a child who turns up dead in the woods or something, that was always understood to be the same as the kid was killed by a wild animal.
Right.
That, of course, the community and parents grieved and everything and they would kill the animal.
Yeah.
But where the 80s and 90s were unique was we had developed this climate of here's all the safeguards against it now. Don't let your kid play outside at all.
Right. Don't listen to Ozzy Osbourne albums.
Yes, and that going to church is going to stop it.
Right. You're right. Right.
Yeah.
Don't play Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah,
that
like it became so sensationalized that it's in some ways it feels like a throwback to that time.
It's almost fear-mongering in a way, because you would have thought back in the 80s that there was a van with free candy written on it on every street corner.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, seriously. I mean, really, dude, I remember even as a kid, you'd be scared. And I lived out in the country, guys. I mean, well, just like you, Agent.
Right.
I know you lived out in the country, too. But, man, when, like, the whole Adam Walsh thing was going on and things like that, man, I'd be scared to walk up to my neighbor's house. I mean, really, my parents were, too.
Yeah.
We bought into
You're going to get grabbed.
Yes. Yeah, you're going to get it put in a van, But, Reverend, one thing going back to Michael Jackson, we talked about this a little bit yesterday, going back and forth with some of our messages. You just recently discovered that Michael Jackson had a ride at Disneyland.
Yes.
Back in, this was about 80s?
This was in the 80s.
Yes. Yeah. I remember this ride.
Around the time of Bad. Somewhere between Bad and Dangerous.
Yes. And I remember this ride, and I hadn't thought about it in years, even with all this stuff that's going on now with, his name coming back into the public circles here. But it was, well, Reverend, I'll let you talk about it, because I'd forgotten about this ride. But
well, the ride was a 15, 20-minute attraction, essentially, that was filmed by Steven Spielberg, which, man, that's a whole other
we'll get into that.
We're going to get
we'll get into that, yeah.
At another point. But he directed it, and it's called Captain EO.
Do you remember that, Mike?
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay. Well, Captain EO, there's an interesting meaning to it, because EO means light. Right. So the name literally means Captain of the Light, which literally translates to Lucifer.
Yeah, the light bearer, the light bringer.
Yeah, and the ride, from what I could tell, is all about resurrecting the dead using the power of dance.
Yes.
Yeah.
And necromancing. I mean,
yeah.
I didn't even mean to make a pun there.
No, it's true.
But it is necromancing.
It is.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah.
It's true. And there, I've talked to a handful of people after I read about it, because I don't remember it. And all of them sort of had the same kind of consistent thing to say. And this is even people who are really well knowledgeable on the occult and things of that nature, but they say this had a real dark energy or aura about it.
I don't remember.
That's hard to put a finger on.
Right, and I don't remember the ride. Obviously, I never went on the ride.
Right.
But it seems like I do remember seeing some footage from the ride as a kid, for the promotional, the ads and stuff like that. But I need to go back. I want to go back and rewatch some of that stuff, because I completely forgot about it, Reverend, until you said something.
I don't think it was around that long.
I think it was around, wasn't it? Not too... it seems like it wasn't around much because of the allegations.
But see, I know it now. I know a guy who said he went to Disney World or Disneyland or Disney World with his wife and kid back in 2011, I believe, and it was still there.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So it was still operating even at that time.
From what I understand, yeah.
Wow, I didn't know
I was there in. Was it in Disneyland or Disney World?
I can't remember.
I'm not sure.
I think Disneyland, I think.
Okay. So it might have been the California.
Okay, because I know I'd been to Disney World back in 2005, 2006, and it was not there at all.
No, it does say that it was in the parks. Okay, it returned to the parks in 2010.
2010.
It came back, so it did shut down for a while, and it came back in 2010. But guys, that's one thing about Michael Jackson that we ought to discuss, given the the subject here, is Michael Jackson was very marketed toward children.
Yes.
Always was. I mean, just kind of on some personal experience. If you had that Michael Jackson jacket back in the day, then you're the coolest kid in school.
Oh, absolutely.
You just were.
Absolutely.
I mean, everything was geared toward kids. Because he had video games. Obviously he had the ride down in Disneyland or in Disney World, and yeah, now with these allegations coming out and some of the behavior, I mean, the behavior is not questioned. We know the man slept with kids, and I'm not saying sexually, but he literally would sleep with children in his bed. He would literally take young boys on tour with him. This is known behavior. This is known. This is not a conspiracy theory. This is...
Even the estate admits to that freely.
Yes, this happened. I think, once again, guys, it goes back to what I was saying when we first started recording, was the man asexual or was he sexual?
There's an interesting racial component to this as well.
Right.
Because I couldn't help but wonder, if Jackson wasn't this raceless, sexless figure he'd been presented of, you can't help but think the parents of these little white stage kids would have been taken more off guard with a grown man with an afro with a Barry White voice
versus bleached skin, straightened hair, complete and total facial reconstruction.
Yeah, basically what I said. He's raceless and sexless.
Yeah, he really was. He really was, because he basically, from what I can tell, in my opinion, he tried to erase his blackness, man.
Yeah.
I mean, for lack of a better term. I mean, going back to the hairstyle, going back to the bleached skin, going back to the absolute reconstruct. Once again, guys, if somebody's going to do that to themselves and try to change your appearance, your outward appearance that much, that has to raise some red flags.
Right.
That there is something going on with this guy. Once again, I'm not saying he was a pedophile. I'm not saying that. Do I think he was? I do. That is my opinion from what I've seen. Even back in the, I didn't want to believe it. Still don't. Do I think he was? I do. That is my opinion. That is my opinion. And like I said, agency, I think we differ with that.
Yeah, definitely.
Right.
I think he did, like we were talking about earlier, did he do inappropriate things? Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
Definitely. Did he go that far? I don't think so.
Once again, that's...
I honestly don't think so, because, I mean, if you're talking about raceless, sexless, it has no place. I mean, it has no place in his mind, or
if that is truly the case,
right?
Now, Reverend, let's put it on the table. What do you think? What's your belief, your opinion?
Oh, I think he did it.
You do
Yeah.
too. Yeah. Like I said, kind of going back to what you said, agency. Some that just inappropriate. Yeah. I mean,
Right.
but to devil advocate it, and even to devil advocate myself, this is not God, you can't even say normal, because I don't consider any pedophile to be normal.
I want to throw.
Definitely not. Definitely not.
I
want to throw an interesting question on the table to the room, basically. But do you think that the Me Too movement is becoming a satanic panic?
Oh, you got to be really careful with that,
Yeah.
because sexual assaults, rapes, things of this nature, man, they do happen. They happen a lot, and they do go unreported. They do.
I mean, it's the same thing we're talking about now.
Yeah, sure.
I mean, my take on it is there seems, on the surface at least, to be some sort of authentic movement going on of exposing Hollywood, or Pedowood,
because that's really where it started, was in Hollywood. With the Me Too.
Yeah, there seems to be an authentic movement going on, but part of that almost dictates by logic that the low-hanging fruit has to fall first.
Right.
And a lot of these people that we're seeing, like whether it was Cosby, Spacey, Weinstein, R. Kelly, Jackson, these really weren't secrets.
Right, that's what I'm saying. It was kind of out there. It was always out there. Now, there's different opinions. Like for Bill Cosby, for instance, there's people out there that say that these women knew that they were taking her. I've literally heard and read people say that.
Yeah.
That all these women kind of came together. I don't know that. I don't think the man would be in prison if there wasn't something to it. Let me put it like that, But I have read the other argument, I
mean, I think there's plenty more we're going to see in relatively short order.
Oh, sure.
The big one's Woody Allen, I keep thinking.
Yeah, man, because he had allegations back in the 80s about underage.
He had
Robert
a Polanski.
Yeah.
Polanski.
Yeah.
I mean, that was the first one, really the
John
first one.
Travolta, I imagine, too.
Yeah.
Yes, because I know he's had some controversy as well, as far as his sexuality, which I am glad. One thing about us in society now, I don't think anybody really cares about homosexuality anymore. Nobody gives a shit.
No.
Like 12 or 20 years ago, John Travolta's gay. Oh my God, now
Right.
gives a shit. Whatever.
Well, on the surface, America's becoming more liberal.
Right,
I guess
right.
it definitely seems like, and that's another thing you started seeing in the 90s. We keep going back to that period, but
yes,
that kind of got the ball rolling in this direction, because, I mean, let's think about this for a second. You saw a major motion picture come out based on Larry Flint.
right? Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
That's right.
During Two Live Crew's obscenity trial, the jury actually asked the judge, "Is it okay if we laugh?"
Yeah.
When the lyrics are read.
Right.
Gay rights, all this stuff. There seems on the surface to be the ball got rolling in that direction towards where we're at now. But, you know, in a lot of ways, politically correct culture is becoming its own form of Puritanism.
Yes, and it almost feels like it's about to eat itself. It almost seems like the left eats itself.
Yeah.
You know, for instance, with some like of the trans stuff coming out now, which I don't want to get into any of that right now. We'll get into that at some point down the line. But you know, you're having like feminists, like hardcore, hard left-leaning feminists coming out against the trans movement because they're saying that men or transgendered women who were born biologically male are coming into their areas. You know, like it was in sports competitions.
Right.
Certain groups like college groups, stuff like that. It's a weird time, guys. I mean, we are living in some strange, at least in my opinion, we're living in some pretty.
It's almost like society
times.
didn't become free in the sense of shedding its Puritanism. We sort of flipped it.
Flip-flopped it, man. Almost its polar opposite. Almost.
Yeah, we have the exact same dynamics for our taboos.
Right.
But it's just in a little bit of a different direction.
It's kind of flipped, like you said, man. It's kind of flip-flopped.
All cultures have their sacred cows. Ours is no different.
Amen. Exactly. But, you know, it's kind of even going back to the whole Michael Jackson thing. You know, it's like, and the Me Too, you know, kind of tying the Me Too movement back into the Michael Jackson thing. You know, we talked about it a little bit in the first hour. Do you believe, do these men have the right to be believed? You know, I don't think they do. I think they have the right to be heard, but I also think that the Jackson family has the right to you know, to confront them, you know, and to, you know, push back against those claims. Once again, in my opinion, do I think Michael Jackson did it? I do. I just, because I don't think the man was asexual. That, once again, that's what it boils down to me. Do I think the man was asexual? Yes or no? And I don't think he was. If he was, different situations, still inappropriate. Mm-hmm. That's another thing that
I think there's too many arguments to lean that way that he is or was.
Yeah, sure, man, and it's something we won't know.
Absolutely.
That's the one thing.
Truly know in our lifetime?
No. The only people that know are the people that the accusers.
Right.
They know whether they're lying or not. Yeah. You know. But I do think it is good to put a spotlight on it. I mean, once again, do I think they have the right to be believed? No. Do I think they have the right to be heard? Absolutely.
I think you said it right there. I think there is a spotlight on it.
Yeah.
Well, a spotlight on these people.
Right. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I think that's ultimately what this is. It's a spotlight.
Very possible. It is possible, man. I don't want to say it's not. You know, because like I said, even though I do believe Michael Jackson did do these things, I would love for somebody to come out and say, heck no, it didn't happen. You know, we can prove it didn't happen. I would love that. That's what I would love.
That's almost impossible.
We'll never get that.
Yeah, the backlash seems to be in full swing.
Yes.
Right now. Yeah. I don't know if you saw it earlier this week, but they announced that the Al Jean, I believe, said the Simpsons episode with Jackson's getting yanked from syndication.
A lot of radio stations are pulling the songs. Yeah.
Drake had pulled the song that he had with Jackson's vocals on it off his tour.
Okay.
Right. And like I said, I heard some stations were pulling, you know, the songs and everything.
Yeah.
Well, guys, I tell y'all what, you know, I do want to talk about something else before we stop recording today. Mm-hmm. So, do you guys have any final thoughts on leaving Neverland?
I don't think we'll ever leave Neverland. I really don't.
Dude,
I don't think we'll anybody will ever leave Neverland.
Dude, that was the line of the day, brother. But I hear what you're saying. Yeah, I do hear I know you didn't mean to give the epic statement of the day, but I agree with that. We'll never know.
There will always be accusations, I think, or doubt.
Yeah, and I think there should be. Even though I do believe, once again,
right.
I do want to have that doubt because I don't know for sure. And I would love for somebody to be able to prove it that he did not do these things. What about you, Reverend?
I'm sort of torn with how far to go into this because I know this is a subject for another time, but I couldn't shake the feeling when watching it that it came really damn close several times to exposing Spielberg.
I've heard that conspiracy theory. Mm-hmm. I've heard that Spielberg was. We'll definitely get in that later. We do have a show planned for that down the line.
Well, you know, they say there's a reason why every child star is fucked up and breaks down.
Right. Yeah. Well, we'll get into that.
Yeah.
We'll get into that. But I tell you guys what, we're about an hour. We're getting in around about an hour and a half here. So I do want to talk about the New Zealand shooting a little bit before. So we'll go ahead and wrap up Neverland.
So are we leaving Neverland?
Yeah, we'll
be back.
We will be back. Yes, yes. It's like Hotel California. You can check out anytime you like. You can never leave. So we're checking out. We're going to check out for.
That's
a little
morbid.
while. Holy shit! I didn't even mean for it to be like that. But anyway, so let's talk a little bit about this New Zealand shooting, guys. I don't know a lot about this thing. I know it's just a couple days old now. Correct. When did this happen? Was it on Thursday?
This happened late Thursday night.
Late Thursday.
Here.
Okay.
Here.
Okay.
But of course, they're like between 12 and 16 hours ahead.
Okay. So this is only a couple, because we're recording this Saturday, so it's only been a couple days.
Yeah.
Right off the bat, Reverend, I've seen that you have posted some stuff that I've not seen anywhere else. I've not seen it on the mainstream media. I've not seen most of my other friends posting. I don't watch a lot of news. I usually get a lot of my news. I hate to say it, but I do get a lot of my news off social media, Reddit, and Facebook. To be completely honest with you, I really do. So, Reverend, I'm gonna ask you, brother. Give me your take. This is your newscast right here.
Are you wanting the backstory to what happened?
Sure. Yeah. Let's hear it.
Okay. Because, like I said, that this occurred Thursday night by our time period, but in New Zealand, this was Friday midday. So this was, when everybody was going to the mosque.
Right.
Well, this guy, Brenton, I can't remember what his last name is. Not that it really matters, I guess. Right. But he showed up wearing full ballistic gear with a balaclava on, and had a couple assault rifles, I think an AR-15 and a couple shotguns.
Right.
Well, he live streamed the whole thing, and it went to Live Leak first, and it got attached to a couple hundred different Facebook pages.
Yeah.
Right.
Because I remember seeing it, like I was online probably about 1 a.m., and I saw it pop up in the corner screen where it said, such and such page is live.
Right.
And I click on it, and it's the minute and a half variation.
No shit.
Yeah, and I watched it, and I said, holy shit.
So you're basically seeing this stuff as it's going on.
Yeah,
right?
as it happened.
Right. Wow, I didn't know that. Okay.
And so when you see that, the first thing that goes to your head is, okay, is this real? Like, yeah. And it was only probably about 5-10 minutes later when all the news, the breaking news started popping up. And I guess 30 minutes after that, there was a manifesto that showed up online too. And it was about 73 pages. It wasn't a long read because most of those pages were short, several sentences.
Right.
But I actually took about 30-45 minutes and read the entire thing.
So what's your take on everything, Reverend? Because there's already a little bit of conspiracy
There's a lot. I mean, there's
huge already. Just 2 days in.
Basically, have you gotten a chance to look at the manifesto? I don't know if they yanked it offline or not.
No, I'm really, really uninformed about this situation. I don't even know the man's name. I've just not really had a chance.
Well, he cited. Oh my gosh, the names are going to elude me now. The kid in South Carolina.
The church roof.
Right.
Okay.
And a few other.
Anders Breivik, the European one.
Yeah.
I did hear that it was
white supremacists.
Yeah, right. That's what I was going to say. I heard it was a lot of white supremacy sayings and symbols.
Yeah,
he
according to the manifesto anyway, he subscribed pretty heavily to the white genocide theory that basically through immigration policies that whites were being displaced through birth rates and such.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And he had according to the manifesto anyway, there was a really strong anti-immigrant thing going on.
Right. So
important to note, he's from Australia.
Right. Now, let me ask you something, Reverend. I saw something that you had posted, and I want to get a little bit more in depth in this. Okay. what you posted was claiming that he was trained, a trained military soldier. Is that
something like that? Yeah.
And he was trained in Pakistan. Is that
well? Here's the way I can frame it. I remember when I saw the clip for the first time, and they later put out a longer form version of it that I believe was about 14, 15 minutes. He, live streamed this entire thing of him in the car, coming and going.
Right.
And I remember when I was watching it, and the first thought I had was, this isn't an amateur.
Right, he knows what he's doing here.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's trained.
See, one of the things about mass shooters is that when you have people who are amateurs, which is, over 99% of them,
right,
is, how would I say it?
It's random and it's sloppy.
Sloppy?
It's
I was gonna say sloppy.
It's a very sloppy thing because people's nerves get to them.
Sure.
Most mass shootings never get more than 5 victims.
Right.
Because even the most hardened shit talkers end up feeling some level of empathy as well.
Right.
And shit talking, I guess, doesn't prepare a person for the reality
to actually
of killing.
Taking a life or lives.
Right.
So you have that factor, but also what I was just saying about how when real chaos and pandemonium comes about, it doesn't go down like people plan in their head.
You can make a point with one shot.
Yeah.
There you go. Right. And it's not like the movies,
right.
But you can do a lot of damage.
Oh yeah.
To a degree if you're trained. If you've got that nerve.
But when this guy went in and was sweeping rooms in a certain pattern, I've been in the military and I recognized it straight away.
Right.
I was like, this guy was trained, whether it was military, whether it was black ops, whether he was a spook, or whether he was just trained by a terrorist group. I said he's been trained. He's not an amateur.
Right. This is not some geek off the street, man.
Yeah. So that was the very first thing.
Right.
I remember thinking, and then a lot of stuff sort of started trickling in, and the long and short of it is that from 2011 until 2018, there is no record of this guy.
Oh, really?
At all.
No, I hadn't heard
that.
This.
Basically,
okay.
that in 2011 he decided he wanted to travel, and hopped around all these different countries for 7 years.
Yep.
Right.
And was just completely off the grid. There's really no record of him at all, which suggests a lot of things.
That's a red flag right there. I mean,
big red flag.
Yeah.
But then 6 months ago, he emerges on social media in Pakistan.
Okay.
And he's talking really fondly of it, saying, they need to lift travel visas, that this place is wonderful, everybody needs to come see it. And he's staying at a 5-star hotel paid for by an international Shia movement.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then nothing really happens again until this shooting. I think he had emerged about 2 weeks before the shooting on social media again in this town called Christchurch in New Zealand.
Right.
And Christchurch, from what I understand, only has about 30,000 people who live in it. It's not a very large place.
Right.
And one of the things that they are known for is that they've had a small handful, like somewhere between 5 and 10 people from their Muslim community that ended up traveling to either Syria or Yemen. Right. I think Yemen was the big one, but ended up joining Al-Qaeda.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So yeah, they were somewhat known for that, I guess, in New Zealand.
Right.
But so this guy emerges there, and then the mosque that was shot up, I know it was a Sunni mosque, but allegedly it was also a Wahhabi mosque, which one of the things that you sort of have to clear up, we've talked about it before, but what we call radical Islam in America is what's called Wahhabism.
Okay. Right.
And it's really the hardest line variation of Sunni. Islam.
See, right.
It's on the extreme end of the Sunni spectrum.
Right.
So, I mean, even though Sunni Islam is a very traditional like reading in the first place, it's more kind of comparable to Baptist,
Baptist,
I guess, in the Christian context.
Right.
Like there really aren't any, what I'd say in air quotes liberal Sunnis,
Right.
but they tend to be the same as Baptist, I guess.
Kind of modernized, I guess.
Yeah.
Secular to a degree.
To a very light degree.
Right.
But Wahhabism is the far end of that spectrum.
Right.
And, I'm not going to go into a deep theological talk, but yeah, it's the variation that's followed by Al Qaeda and ISIS, and it's the state religion of the Saudi royal family.
It's the Muslims that we fear here in America.
Right. It's what Fox News and all the other ones
Yes.
call radical Islam.
Right,
it's called
right.
Wahhabism.
Yeah,
it was named
right.
after a guy who I've heard it framed in the context of for the American mind to make sense of that he was similar to like a country preacher or a reformer back in the mid 1800s, but it was a guy named Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab, and he was a reformer who was reacting to a lot of the things that he saw was decadent in the religion, like practices like saint worship, people praying at graves or cemeteries,
Right.
and things that he saw as being, very much shifted away from the original vision of the religion in the peninsula in the the year 632.
Right. Yeah.
And he struck a deal with the Saudi royal family.
Okay, and to kind of start that movement.
Yeah, that he was sort of like their Rasputin figure, if that makes sense.
Okay. Yes.
And
yep.
so the movement has really grown and grown and grown since then, to where it's it's been really influential in a lot of circles, even though a lot of Muslims consider it sort of fringe. It's still, very big in prisons, in terrorist groups.
I got you.
In
Right.
poor neighborhoods and so on. But, I can't say small, in air quotes, that it's a small fringe, because, when we're talking about a religion of 2 billion
There you
people,
go.
even if it's only 10%,
You're still talking about.
you're still talking about a fuckload.
Hundreds and thousands of people.
Yeah,
Here, not
but
millions, yeah.
but anyway, that's what it is.
Right,
that
right.
this mosque apparently was a Wahhabi mosque that was
Right.
shot at.
So now, was there any connection, or is there any theories? And once again, this is all just speculation. We don't. We're not saying one way or the other here. But wasn't there some speculation that he may have been not a Sunni,
Shia convert?
Yeah.
Yeah, there is, and the international Shia Brotherhood, I believe, was the Ismaili group.
Right.
That he did stay at a 5-star hotel paid for by them.
Right.
Which is a little odd.
Once again, a red flag.
Yeah. There was a lot of red flags in his manifesto, I noticed, too.
For sure.
Yeah. I don't know if you saw any of the stuff that I was talking about on, when I brought this up, but apparently his background is he's a Serbian Jew.
Right.
And for somebody who's a white nationalist, allegedly, he had a lot of really kind words to say about Jews.
Right.
Yeah.
I did see a headline. I didn't read it. I just saw a headline that said something to that extent as well.
Yeah.
And,
Here, on that other flip, New Zealand Prime Minister made it a point yesterday to talk about a lot of things are going to start happening with their gun control.
Oh, the gun control law. Well, isn't that what they're saying that his whole intention was to start a gun grab?
Yeah, well, he mentioned that in his manifesto. He said that there were a number of primary objectives he had in doing it, and outside of the obvious, one of the things that he said he wanted to do was to polarize North America,
Right.
and to kickstart a civil war over the Second Amendment,
Right.
By adding to the already going discussion.
Right. To kind of just just kind of light the fuse to it, I guess.
Yeah.
But well, guys, I know that this story obviously is still very new, and I'm sure we're going to hear a lot in the next few days.
Yeah,
and
I hate to
weeks,
draw too many conclusions
Right.
about it, but what you said there's been a lot of allegations that he was a Shia convert who trained in Pakistan,
Right.
and another one I'm reading now there's a lot that was suggesting he was Mossad.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So see, that's once again another layer to this thing, and I'm sure cover this more as the good news continues. I'm sure we'll get, as we get information, we'll talk about that a little more.
Yeah, the vibe. The last thing I'll sort of say on it is the vibe that is really coming out, and I've seen a lot of people say it in these words, is that you're getting heavy Tim McVeigh, Stephen Paddock type vibes,
Right.
where, when people say false flag, that tends to be another really loaded term because it suggests that the whole event's fake,
Yeah,
or
right,
people
right.
didn't die or something, which really isn't the case.
Right.
That, by invoking McVeigh and Paddock both, what is sort of being presented is that this guy isn't who they say he is.
There's more to the
It's
story.
like an attention shift.
Yeah.
Right. Or at the very least, there is definitely more to this than we're
That there's some kind of a really weird backstory to this guy. He wasn't just some random geek off the street.
Right. I mean, exactly. Because if you're going to go in and you're going to clear rooms, you're not just. You got to be trained for
Right.
that. Well, guys, I tell you, great show. This has been a phenomenal show. I figure we'll probably go ahead and start wrapping it up. Any final thoughts, Reverend? You have anything you'd like to kind of capstone this special presentation with?
Not really.
Yeah, I think
Agent C.
We covered a lot.
We covered a lot.
Yeah.
I think there's probably still a lot more to cover, and we'll definitely be back on these subjects.
Oh, absolutely.
For sure.
Yeah, we already have one show lined up, talking about the pedophilia in Hollywood. We got that coming up in a few months.
And
Or
honestly,
if not sooner.
honestly,
maybe sooner.
we're still
Yeah.
fresh off of this whole documentary.
Oh, yeah, I mean, this is new. This is brand new stuff.
There
yeah.
can be a lot more stuff that can pop up.
Absolutely.
Well,
for
you know,
sure.
a general rule that I've talked about when we were going over the Jussie Smollett thing is I don't like to go do too much beyond speculation.
Right.
I generally try to wait at least a week
Sure, to get it more.
when I go into something, because I can remember how you and I were talking about with his case, how as soon as it happened, there were people online who were saying this absolutely definitely did happen.
Yeah, oh, sure.
And there were
Yes,
people
yes.
saying this
Yeah,
absolutely
yeah.
definitely didn't happen. And I mean, I'll throw my own self into it. I said, I don't think this happened.
Sure, right. I
But-
didn't either.
But what I also said, though, was I go, let's wait a week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just like this New Zealand thing, because we haven't even begun to get all this information. And we haven't even begun to start looking deeper into
Yeah.
this information.
Like I said, let's not get too hair trigger about this.
Right.
Because with all things like this, facts begin trickling in.
Absolutely. And so does misinformation. You know, we have to keep it real on both sides of that. So definitely just speculating right now, just kind of throwing out some of our thoughts and everything with it. But
Right.
well, guys, this was once again. I'm glad we
Absolutely.
decided to do this.
Yeah.
This was not planned. Once again, this is something that we're like, hey, this documentary's out. It's a hot topic. Let's get on it. And I'm glad we did. Well, if Agent C, if you're good, and
I'm
Reverend,
good.
if you're good, then for
All
Thunderpud
clear.
number 2, y'all stay woke.
Indeed.
This is a test of the emergency broadcast system. The broadcasters of your area, in voluntary cooperation with the FCC and other authorities, have developed this system to keep you informed in the event of an emergency. If this had been an actual emergency, you would have been instructed where to tune in your area for news and official information. This concludes this test of the emergency broadcast system.